Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1052A, and today's date is August 18th, 2016, and the title of the episode is, If This is the So-Called Recovery, the Financial Collapse is Going to be a Disaster. Let's get into the economic collapse financial news. Now, there are many people out there who do not believe that some type of economic catastrophe is about to happen. They believe that the world that we're living in is going to go on, and the way of life is going to go on just the way it is. Now, this is not to scare people. This is not to say, hey, everyone should be scared, running in fear. What we're doing is we are looking at what is really going on in the economy. Just like prior to 2008, there were people who were out there discussing the economy, telling people that the economy is not doing as well as it appears, that there's a housing bubble, there's a credit bubble, that we're going to have this major collapse in 2008. And people said, to all these individuals, this is ridiculous. What are you even talking about? How possibly can this economy crash? Because real estate is continually moving up. The economy seems strong. Everyone seems to have a job. The stock market is rising. Gold is very low. So why in the world would there be a collapse? It makes no sense in what you are saying. Well, think about it. Prior to 2008, there were so many economic indicators pointing and showing the way that this economy that we were in at that time was going to collapse. There was a housing bubble, there was a stock market bubble, there was a credit bubble. Corporations were about to implode, but the U.S. government central bankers, the corporate media, kept it quiet. They kept the narrative of the story to everything is fine. Those people who are saying the economy is going to crash, they are crazy people. The Fed even came out and said it, and I know I've said this many, many times, that they weren't forecasting anything. There was no signs whatsoever, and all the data they looked at, that there's going to be any type of crash. Now think about what the U.S. government central bankers, what the Fed, what the corporate media had to do to keep the illusion alive for all of those years leading up to 2008. Think about how many lies they had to tell, how many data points they had to manipulate to convince you that everything was fine. Keep putting your money into the stock market. Hey, those retirement funds, keep buying those subprime securities. Real estate market's not going down. Keep purchasing those houses with no money down. Your job is secure. You won't be laid off. Nothing's going to happen. Think about that for a second. Now take that and bring it to the present. What has the government had to do? What has the Fed, what did they have to do? What did the corporate media have to do to keep this illusion alive since 2008? What are they hiding? What aren't they telling the people? And when we look at all of this, when we look past the stock market, when we look past what the Fed is saying, when we look past what the president is saying, when we look past the corporate media with their propaganda about how great the economy is, and we look at the hard data, and we look at the economic indicators, and we follow them from the beginning to the end, and we watch them decline every single day. This indicator moves down. Retail continually moves down. Housing continually declines. And we track and we watch how these bubbles are created, how they're kept up, and how the banks are insolvent, how corporations are losing revenue, sales, earnings are down. Now, when we track this from 2008 up to the present, we see the picture of what is really going on. We see the actual facts. We see what the corporate media, what the government, what the Fed, what they have to do to keep people in the dark. I mean, you really think about it, this is a huge operation. To hide all of this from the American people, to convince them that the economy is doing well. And we know the economy is not doing well. Why? Because we've been following it. It will not be a surprise to any of you, because we've been watching the economy deteriorate. We've been watching the bubbles being pumped up. We've been watching the corporations where their sales are declining, their profits declining, their revenue declining. We've been watching the banks pump up the stock market by taking the free money from the Fed and pumping it into the markets. We've been watching the Fed take the toxic real estate and buying it off the bank's books. We've been watching all of this, so you know what is coming. And all those people who are out there saying, oh, the economy is not going to crash. You know something? Those are the same people that said that in 2006, 2007, all the way up to 2008 when the entire economy collapsed. It's the same exact people. The same people who are saying today that everything is fine. Well, if they've been really following and they've been really looking at what the economy is doing, if they've really been looking at the economic indicators, they would wise up. They would realize that things are not fine. Actually, more and more people are waking up because they know something's wrong. It makes no sense what the U.S. government central bankers are saying. It makes no sense because more and more people are losing their jobs. More and more companies are laying off people, buying back their stock, showing their earnings are down. Retail is continually contracting. More and more stores are closing. They're trying to explain away why their sales are dropping. Very difficult to do because they don't want to blame it on the economy. The housing market is collapsing. The bubbles are popping all over the place. And if you're not watching, it's very easy to sit there and say everything is fine. And what happens is when the entire system comes crashing down, all those individuals who are out there saying that this is not going to happen, they scurry away like little mice back into their holes, never to be heard from again. And all those people that have been watching, looking at the economic indicators, understanding what is happening around the world, well, those people are prepared. Those people are ready. Those people are not shocked when it happens. Many people have the ability to make a profit when this happens because they understand the market. They understand what is happening around the world. During 2008, there were people who made money on this when the market came down. And for those people who don't have that ability to call it, most of them are insiders, they'll be prepared for what is coming. They'll have the food. They'll have the supplies. They'll have gold and silver on hand. They'll have cash on hand. They won't be sitting there going, what just happened? How did I just lose my life savings? How did I lose my pension? How am I going to pay for the house? Those people that have been following, watching understanding, analyzing. They won't have that fear. So when people say this is all about fear-mongering, actually, I think it's the opposite. It's removing the fear. It's removing all of that comes when the system collapses. Because the system that we're watching, it's completely impossible from what we've been looking at for this system to continue on the way it's going. Back in 2008, it was impossible for the system to continue on. And it reached that point. And all the way up to that point, throughout the year, people are saying, not going to crash, you're crazy, don't listen, it's not going to crash, crazy, not going to crash. Boom, crashes. All those people disappeared. Everyone's running around scared. People don't know what's going on. People are leaving houses. Can't pay for them. Pensions are gone. People don't know what they're going to do. People commit suicide. That's the fear. By listening and understanding all this, we're removing the fear. It's not fear-mongering. It's removing the fear. The government is what produces the fear. Think about it. Up to that point, they told you everything was fine. You believed everything was fine. And then all of a sudden, when everything started to crash, you felt the fear because you were lied to. And now you don't have to feel the fear. Let's get into the economic collapse news. Now, we've been watching the economy here, and there are many different indicators out there, and it is getting worse as time goes on. Now, everyone wants us to believe that the Brexit is causing a lot of these problems. In the UK, they're saying, oh, post-Brexit, things look a lot worse than pre-Brexit. Well, nothing's happened yet. The UK has not left the European Union. But this is what they want everyone to believe. Now, we've been following all of this, and we realize that the bank system was deteriorating, collapsing, they're insolvent, and the situation is getting worse. And when we look at the UK banks, the major banks in the City of London, well, they reduced their forecast for the growth in UK in 2017, and they're warning everyone about a recession. Barclays Capital predicts that UK GDP is going to shrink by 0.5% in 2017. Other banks like Citigroup, JP Morgan Chase, Goldman Sachs, Royal Bank of Scotland, Bank of America, they have also reduced their predictions. Now, according to the index published monthly by HM Treasury Bank of America, we see there was a forecast of 2.3% growth, and now it predicts a 0.2% growth. And of course, they're blaming this on the Brexit. This was happening all along. This is not a surprise to any of us. We see the European banks. They are completely insolvent. They're failing their stress tests, even though there is no pass or fail. They're not doing well. They're insolvent. They don't have cash on hand. They will not be able to weather a financial crisis. Now, here in the United States, we have the same exact problem. The banks are completely insolvent. We see manufacturing is continually declining. We see the Philly Fed. That had a modest bounce. I like when they say it's a modest bounce. But it bounced on hope. From 33.7 to 45.8. This is the highest in 18 months. But when we look past hope and we look at the underlying components of the Philly Fed, they're a complete disaster. And it's amazing how they can create this out of thin air to make everyone feel good about what is happening. We see that new orders, they've collapsed. Employment crashed to 7-year lows. The average work week plunged. Prices paid soared, and inventories fell. 6 of the 9 indicators have fallen. It's a disaster. The current new orders index dropped from a reading of 11.8 in July to negative 7.2. But thank God, hope is up. The survey's indicators of employment weakened. The employment index fell from 18 points to negative 20, which is the largest negative reading for the current year. But thank God we have hope. Well, hope is not going to make the economy better. Caterpillar, for instance. We've been tracking Caterpillar. And we can see Caterpillar retail sales, they are down. They are now posting 44 consecutive declines. And July's data, well, that was just completely awful. North American machine sales, they are down 20% after falling 12% in June. Asia Pacific sales, July is down 7%. It was 7% in June. We see Latin America, July sales are down 43%. They were down 38% in June. We see Europe, Africa, Middle East, sales are down 13%. They fell 4% in June. So this means that Caterpillar, their rolling 3-month retail machines machine sales have dropped by 19% in July. And the situation right now for Cat is depression. They're in trouble right now. This is why they're continually closing factories, laying off people. This situation that they're in is longer than the Great Recession. Because during the Great Recession, they had sales declining for 19 months. We are at 44 months. And if this is a recovery, what is the economic collapse going to look like? Because once the corporate media, the government, the Fed finally admit, and of course they'll be admitting it after we've been in the collapse for 8 to 9 months, once they admit it, all the corporations, all the banks, everyone is just going to say, you know something? It's a collapse. We got to lay off people. People have no jobs. We got to close the banks. We got to do this. That's what's going to happen. It's going to be a complete disaster. And people, this time, it's going to be very, very difficult to recover. I mean, think about it. The number of people who lost their homes to foreclosure, short sales, people who've lost their wealth in pensions, people who've lost their jobs but never got that same job back, never got the same pay back, who no longer live that same lifestyle. What is going to happen this time around? It's going to be a lot worse. We see Obamacare. It is doomed. The major U.S. insurers, they're going to lose roughly around $2 billion on Obamacare. United Health has announced a loss of $150 million. Aetna, Anthem, Humana, they're going to be losing about $300 million each. And of course, when Obamacare came out, they were like, this is going to be fantastic. But when you really think about it, this whole thing is one gigantic scheme. Because Obamacare advocates, they hoped that big government subsidies to consumers would persuade healthy people to sign up. But the policies have largely been taken out by older, less healthy people who are more expensive to insure. And the younger individual who can't find work, who have a lot of student loan debt, are looking at this saying, well, I'm healthy right now. I'm young. There's no reason for me to use this. Families who've gotten laid off from their jobs, who can't find a job or are working part-time saying, listen, I can't even afford these monthly payments. And I'm not going to get any benefits. So I might as well take the penalty because it's a lot less. And I might as well just pay for the doctor when I have to go to the doctor. And this is exactly what we're seeing right now. Because this was created to help the government, to help the insurance companies. It was not created to help the people. And every time you do something like this, there's a backlash. Because people realize that this is not giving me a benefit. This is why Congress, when Obamacare was put out there to the public, they exempted themselves and their staffers because the staffers complained it was too expensive. They couldn't afford it. So Obama stepped in and said, listen, I exempt you. And they didn't have to worry about it. Now, if it's so great, so fantastic, they should have been all sitting there on TV, and our fearless leader, which is none of these people are leaders, should have been on the TV saying, I am dropping my health care that I have now, and I'm taking Obamacare, well, the Affordable Care Act. But we did not see that. Why? Because they knew it was terrible. They knew they had something a lot better, and they were going to keep it. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.